Coming up on show 516, the Chevy Camaro could be an EV muscle car. We say happy birthday Tesla, and EVs taking 50% of the market in Norway. Well, those stories and many more coming up on today's podcast. We are also talking about the new Genesis EV. We're talking about the next hybrid that actually floats, and why Honda and Dyson are in a bit of a war of words. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Wherever you're listening around the world, welcome to the show. You've tuned into EV News Daily for Tuesday the 2nd of July. Definitely not the 9th today. My name is Martyn Lee, and I go through every EV story to save you time, like the TLDR of electric car news. I go through all of it so you don't have to. Well, thank you, as always, to myev.com for helping make this show. They have built the world's first marketplace all about buying and selling EVs and learning about them along the way. It's a totally free marketplace that simplifies the buying and selling process, and it helps you learn about them along the way. So, a comment from yesterday's show, by the way, I was talking about how from an outside perspective, I do see a lot of this rush to deliver cars at the end of every single quarter, with Tesla all about keeping Wall Street happy and the stock price, and how all the different members of staff need to work all hours of the day to get cars in the hands of customers, to hit the delivery targets that Elon sets. And I was kind of saying yesterday that maybe at times that can be perhaps a negative energy, because they go all out at the end of the quarter and you can almost kind of kill themselves in order to hit certain targets. And actually, it was a user on YouTube who, because we put the audio on YouTube as well of the podcast, goes by the name of Lounge Lizard, reminded me, actually, yes, they do that every quarter, but this one it is important because the EV tax credit, which already tapered down from $7,500 at the end of quarter four last year, once again tapered yesterday. So from the end of June to the 1st of July, if you could get your car delivered and the paperwork done, then you could have made a couple of $1,000 tax credit saving on next year's tax bill. So yes, you're absolutely right. I forgot to mention that. There is a very real, tangible, customer-focused reason why you would get as many cars in customers' hands as possible. Thank you for reminding me of that. I mentioned at the start of the show that the Chevy Camaro, a very important car, muscle car for US culture, could be killed off first and then resurrected as an EV. But you know what? I'm here in the UK, and whilst I can appreciate US culture, it's probably best if I leave it to the experts. So a bit of a change to the normal way this show works. At the end of the show, I'm going to dial up one of my friends who writes about cars in the US, and we'll get his take on an electric Camaro. First of all, though, we want to say happy birthday Tesla. I missed this one yesterday. 1st of July yesterday was indeed Tesla's birthday. According to a short history written by CNN a while ago, Tesla was founded on the 1st of July 2003 by Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpening. The engineers became CEO and CFO respectively. They were inspired to create the company after General Motors ended the EV1 program and would go on to crush and destroy all of their electric cars. Well, then in 2004, with Elon Musk getting in the mix, the entrepreneur who made a fortune at PayPal led the Series A funding round. Well, what was that? Well, it was his opportunity to invest money into Tesla, $6.35 million of his own cash. For that $6.5 million almost investment, he got to become the chairman of the company. Then there was another big milestone, the investments from Daimler, and actually an investment that gets forgotten about a lot, the investment from Toyota. Exactly 9 years ago, actually it was 30th of June, so we're 9 years and 2 days away from another big investment. 9 years ago, Toyota Motors invested $50 million and entered a joint venture with Tesla to make EVs and parts, and it would then be June the 5th, 2017, just over 2 years ago, that Toyota would completely dispose of all their shares in Tesla. But the Daimler investment, the Daimler owning a bit of Tesla and Toyota owning a bit of Tesla, two bits of the company's history that certainly I know I forget, Well, electric cars have had an amazing month in the market of Norway. Almost half of all new cars sold in Norway in the first 6 months of the year were powered by fully electric engines, up from just over a quarter in the same period last year, ensuring the Nordic nation retains its top global ranking in EV vehicle sales, says Reuters in a new report published today. Tesla's Model 3 was Norway's top-selling vehicle. Let me say that again. Tesla's Model 3 was Norway's top-selling vehicle completely. The Norwegian Road Federation, the NRF, announced when they put out their sales data yesterday on Monday. 48.4% of all new cars sold in January to June, because we do get up-to-date data from Norway. So literally, this is fresh data. January to June, 48.8% of all new cars sold were electric. Well, that surpasses the 31.2% seen for the full year of 2018, and it makes the oil-producing nation of Norway the global leader in per capita EV car sales by such a big margin. While seeking to end the sale of diesel and petrol engines by the middle of next decade, Norway likes to exempt battery-driven cars from the big, heavy taxes imposed on vehicles powered by fossil fuel. It also offers benefits like discounts on road bills. Tesla in total, by the way, Tesla sold 3,760 vehicles in Norway last month alone. That's a 25% share of the market. Let me say that again. It's a 24.5% share of all cars in the month. I mean, just imagine where you live if a quarter of the cars sold were from one maker. And they're called Tesla. It's amazing, isn't it? Also the top-selling brand for the first 6 months of the year. Most of their sales were, of course, of the mid-sized Model 3. Any of my Norwegian listeners, I can see from my download stats, I do have listeners in Norway. If you are driving your Model 3 or even your Tesla, and you got it in the first 6 months of this year, I am talking about the sales data that you contributed towards. Well, the first electric car for Hyundai's Genesis brand is due in 2021. Manfred Fitzgerald, the brand's global executive vice president, has been noting to Australia's Drive that the company is working on a new electric platform that's going to spawn a sedan and an SUV, but the sedan is going to be coming first, and it's going to be the Genesis sedan, whatever Hyundai want to particularly call it. But Green Car Report says that though Genesis has shown several EV concepts over the years, the introduction of a conventional luxury electric sedan rather than the expected electric SUV is a new direction for the brand, and we know that Hyundai they've got the technology to make great EVs under the Genesis name, the luxury brand. We'll see what they can do. Talking about car sales, not only in Norway but all of Europe actually, the past month 36,200 plug-in cars were registered, although plug-in hybrids have been dropping, which is interesting. In Europe at least, the quickest segment of the market growing is all-electric cars. The Renault Zoe was the number one car last month the month before in May. The Renault Zoe was the number one. That's an outgoing generation. There's a new Zoe ZE50 coming very soon. We think September, October. More details certainly we'll have soon. I've got a Saturday special interview coming very soon from someone who knows these cars inside out better than anybody else, and somebody who sells them for a living. A double-header interview, and that's coming in the next couple of weeks on the podcast. So Renault Zoe number one in Europe. In May, they had 4,000 registrations, followed by the Model 3. That was just behind, 2,800. Then the BMW i3. Then the Volkswagen e-Golf. Yes, I know, they are making and selling the e-Golf in Europe. And then finally, the Nissan Leaf, the world's most popular car, isn't selling in huge numbers at the moment with the latest model. We'll see what the new E Plus with the 60 kilowatt-hour battery can do. I love this next story from Autoblog about how EV batteries are really getting in lots of new places. The world's first cruise ship, propelled partially by battery power, is set to head out from the northern area of Norway on its maiden voyage. The cruise operator Hurtigruten said on Monday the hybrid expedition cruise ship, the Roald Amundsen, I think I would say that, or Amundsen, anyway, can take 500 passengers. It's designed to sail in really harsh climate waters up to the Arctic. While the engines run mainly on marine gas oil, the ship's battery pack can make the ship run for up to an hour under ideal conditions on battery power alone. Hurtigrutens Chief Executive Daniel Schkeldam told Reuters in this story, and I'll pop a link in the show notes. Well, the British and Chinese car industries have signed a brand new agreement today that will enable them to collaborate on automotive technology and development. Britain's Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders and the Chinese Association of Automobile Manufacturers announced the new deal, which is intended to create new business opportunities between the two nations. According to the SMMT, which is the trade body here where I'm talking from, they said the new deal will open up opportunities in EVs and zero-emission technology, battery research, development, things like that. The organisation says there are no longer local issues to contend with, but global issues in terms of clean air. This is amazing because for a long time in this country, the SMMT, that's the trade body of the automotive industry, when EVs weren't such a large part of the market, they didn't so much talk them down, that would be unfair to them, but let's say they weren't exactly EV's biggest cheerleader because it's their job to represent the automakers. The automakers were selling diesel cars all those years ago, and so, of course, all of the positive stories and press was around diesel. However, since EVs have really taken the mind share over the last few months, I have seen more and more positive statements coming out from the industry body, and that's a very positive thing. I'm delighted to see that as well. Before we get on to the call that I'm going to make to the US, I want to talk about Sir James Dyson. Yes, him of household goods, but now moving into the EV world fame. Sir James Dyson accused Honda of scuppering a deal that could have led him to build a new electric car in Britain, writes thisismoney.co.uk. In a letter seen by the Mail on Sunday, the billionaire entrepreneur says he wanted to negotiate a deal with Honda to use part of its factory in Swindon, in the county of Wiltshire, but he says the Japanese car giant refused to do a deal with him. The 72-year-old's eponymous company, Dyson, failed in an attempt to expand into the government-owned land in Wiltshire as well. Sources say that instead of doing that, they revealed plans to manufacture their EVs not in the UK. They couldn't get the deal done here. They're going to make them in Singapore instead. He did take a lot of heat in the newspapers, by the way, at the time for being a British company making the cars abroad. Honda last night waded into the row, dismissing his claims as factually inaccurate. And so I'll pop a link to that in the show notes. Right, so back to our story that I mentioned. The Camaro, a very famous car in the US, is going to be killed off, but then resurrected, possibly as an EV. Now, here in the UK, I'm not the most well-qualified person to talk about American muscle cars and pony cars. I mean, I could, but I wouldn't be as believable as someone who knows this market inside out. So I've been through my little black book of contacts, and one of my friends in the US is on the line right now. He is the global editor-in-chief of Motor1.com, and I'm going to pick his brains on what it would be like for a famous American muscle car to go all EV powered. Welcome to the show, John Neff. Thank you for joining us, John.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. The Camaro is an extremely important car in the US. Even bigger news than the fact that it may go electric in the next 5 or 6 years is that before that happens, Chevy may actually kill it in the US. We have reported that in 2023, Chevy does not have any plans for the current Corvette, which means the current generation car they would stop selling. And the big question is, what happens next? Does it go away forever, or does it come back in some form? Some speculation is that it could come back as a pure electric vehicle, and there's some pretty good reasons for why we can look at the tea leaves and predict that. One is that one of the lead engineers for the Camaro in January moved over to GM's electric division. And the speculation is, why would he do that unless he were taking his high performance credentials from the Camaro team to GM's electric vehicle team to work on a high-performance electric car product. Another tip that might lead us to believe the Camaro is going electric is there already is an electric Camaro. Chevy made a one-off electric Camaro drag racer called the E-Copo, purely a one-off just to celebrate the car and kind of playfully see what it can do. But this amazing electric drag racer was faster even than the Dodge Demon or the Tesla Model S. It's basically just a pure performance machine. So they've already played with the idea of an electric Camaro. The alternative of the Camaro coming back as an EV is that it maybe doesn't come back at all. So I think most of the people in the US, even if they are diehard muscle car fans who aren't used to cars that plug in, would be ecstatic to have the Camaro stick around, even if it were as a pure EV. Also, when you look at vehicles like the Tesla Model S, they've already proven that performance and EVs go hand in hand. So I think that's all it takes to convince a diehard performance enthusiast in the US that an electric muscle car is a pretty good idea.
Now, muscle car isn't a phrase that really translates this side of the Atlantic. Culturally, muscle car, I'm thinking of drag strips and all that kind of romance. Is that really the place that it holds in American car culture?
It really is. As a matter of fact, I live in the state of Ohio, and we still have operating drag strips all over the place where you can take your car on a weekend and run it down the drag strip to see how fast it is in the quarter mile. So that's still a part of car culture in the US. Now, as time has gone on and cars have gotten more advanced, vehicles like the Camaro and the Ford Mustang have gotten to become pretty good all-around sports cars. They handle pretty well now. They're comfortable and all of that. But their roots are definitely drag racing. Going back to the 60s when it all started with the Mustang, these cars quickly just became extremely high horsepower coupes that could go fast in a straight line. And back in the day, the drag strip was the street. And they would illegally run up and down the street racing each other. Fortunately, it got a lot safer and more professional when the sport of drag racing came along. But yeah, that's still what these cars are used for.
So you take something like that is very important to American car culture, and you take out the big, what would it be, like V8 or something, and put batteries inside it. What reaction would that get from the typical petrol heads, though?
I think there would be somewhat of a backlash. I think some people would not accept in their head the idea of a Camaro or a muscle car of any kind that didn't run on a V8 engine. However, like I mentioned, the performance credentials of electric cars are so good, and a lot of that is owed to Tesla and the Model S, which, is one of the fastest cars in the world, despite being a four-door regular kind of sedan. And you look at other, supercars that are pure electric, like the Neo, or Volkswagen has their electric race car. And so no one can deny that a car powered purely by batteries can't be fast or even the fastest in the world, but there's going to be that contingent of people who just believe that to be a muscle car, you have to have a V8 engine. However, as you know better than I, looking across the industry, a wave of electrification is coming, and it's going to affect segments that have traditionally been solely gas powered, and that's really been part of their identity. It's going to reach them as well, and so they're going to have to get used to it, I think. And the Camaro might be the first taste of that they get. There's no electric Mustang. There's no electric Dodge Challenger. So the electric Camaro that exists right now, the e-Copo that I mentioned, is really the first taste. And it may just be testing the waters for a production electric Camaro. And keep in mind, we're talking like the year 2025. So it's not like it's going to be tomorrow. But it could be, 2024, 2025.
Well, if people can't get their head around an electric muscle car, you wait till the trucks and the Ford F-150s have batteries. then they're going to really have to scratch their heads. The diesel lovers that want their trucks with a big diesel engine knocking away. What on earth will country singers talk about when their trucks are electric?
They won't break down. They won't have anything to write their lyrics about.
It's all right. They can still drink beer on their tailgate. It's fine. They'll still have that. Hey, look, thank you for coming on the podcast today to give us an insight. Obviously, I'm in the UK, an American insight. You have your own podcast as well with your team at motor1.com. Tell us all about that very quickly.
Yeah, we have the Motor One podcast. We publish it every week on Friday, and we talk all about the big stories of the week. We usually focus on one major story, and I have a couple of the editors of the site on with me. And we usually get into a big argument with our differing views of the auto industry in the U.S. We talk about the big news of the week, and we always finish the show discussing which cars we're driving that week, since we get to test so many different cars. And it's a great time. Everyone should subscribe.
Cool. So if people are listening to this, they're into their EVs, but also generally into cars as well. It is your weekly must-listen search, Motor One, in iTunes, Spotify, all those places where you get your podcasts. Awesome, John. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Well, I thought that worked pretty well, actually. First time I've done that and gone live to somebody on the podcast. Slightly different quality, I think, but I think we got away with it okay. Using like a posh version of Skype to do that, and I think it was all right. Maybe we'll do more of that. Maybe we'll do more of it. We'll cross to places all around the world if I need to defer to somebody who is an expert in a certain area. I hope you liked that. I enjoyed that. Always give me your feedback on the show anytime you want to, as well as contributing to our question of the week this week. It's a contentious one. By no means is it meant to be a sexist one. It's meant to maybe spark an open and honest debate about this subject. I was looking at my stats, and 90% of the listeners to this podcast are male. I don't think I'm particularly blokey or, like a little mini Clarkson, as I said yesterday, a little version of Jeremy Clarkson. I think this podcast would be easily accessible for men or women. So why are most of the people interested in EVs listening to this podcast mostly men? Are EVs still a guy thing? And if so, why? Let me know. You can email me anytime, hello@evnewsdaily.com, leave a comment on Facebook or YouTube if you want to. Well, thank you very much to 230 patrons of the podcast, whose generosity keeps me going. And that's my premium partners of the show, Phil Roberts of Electric Future, Brad Crosby, and also added to the show yesterday, Avid Technology. And we're going to get them on the podcast very, very soon to tell us all, update us. They've been on before, and they now join us as a new premium partner of the show. If you'd like to download any of the previous 515 shows, you can do online for free. Get the new shows first and free and automatically by hitting subscribe on your podcast app or YouTube, and then you can get the show as soon as it's published. Come and say hi on social media by searching EV News Daily. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow, and remember, there's no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.